All right, let's kick off this deep dive. And today, we're really getting into some interesting stuff, I think.
Oh, yeah.
We're going into the Book of Thoth and the Law of One,
Looking forward to.
two systems that really, I think, kind of approach the universe in a similar way, but from very different perspectives.
Absolutely.
So um, I guess, like, just to set the stage, we're talking about Aleister Crowley's Book of Thoth, which is a tarot deck,
Right.
and, a system of divination that he created, and
A very influential one.
very, very influential, and he was a very interesting character.
Yes, he was.
A very interesting character. Very much an occultist, and kind of approached magic and spirituality in his own unique way.
Definitely a unique personality in the history of esotericism.
Yeah. And so, and then the Law of One, which is a channel text.
Yes, a channeled text that purports to be communication from an extraterrestrial entity named Ray.
Right. Yeah. So we're really dealing with some interesting concepts here. And to want to preface this by saying that, we're not advocating for any particular belief system.
Of course not.
Just, really looking at the ideas themselves and
Exploring them.
exploring them and seeing, what we can find there.
Absolutely.
So, I guess starting with the Book of Thoth, Crowley's deck is known for its striking imagery and symbolism.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think one of the most fascinating things is how he really kind of departs from the traditional interpretations of the cards.
Yes, and I think what's really intriguing is that Crowley didn't see the tarot as simply a reflection of the universe or a fortune-telling tool.
Right.
He believed it was a way to convey specific doctrines and modes of working.
So it's more than just divination for him.
Yes, very much so.
It's almost like, I don't know, like magical propaganda almost.
That's a very good way to put it, I think. He was very much using symbolism to shape consciousness and influence reality
Interesting.
in very specific ways.
So that brings us to, I guess, like his unique interpretations of the cards.
Right.
And, for instance, like he replaces the star card, which is traditionally associated with hope and inspiration, with the Emperor card.
Yes, he ties it to the sign of Aries and the concept of the Great Mother.
Right. So that's a pretty big shift.
Yeah.
What do you make of that change?
Well, I think it's a very bold move, and it really speaks to how Crowley saw the Emperor as a representation of active directed willpower, linking it to the concept of the primal will that initiates creation.
Right.
So rather than the passive receptivity of the traditional star,
Right.
it suggests a more proactive approach to spiritual growth.
So instead of waiting for inspiration, you're actively shaping your reality,
Yes, exactly.
aligning yourself with this primal will.
Precisely. And this ties back to his definition of magic as the science and art of causing change in conformity with will.
Okay, wait, hold on. I got to stop you there for a second because
Yeah.
I think this whole will concept needs a little bit of unpacking here. Like, what do we mean? What does Crowley mean by will in this context?
That's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of Crowley's system.
Okay.
By will, he's not simply referring to everyday desires or whims.
Right.
This is about aligning oneself with one's true will, a deeper spiritual purpose that drives our evolution
Okay.
and directs our actions towards a higher goal.
So it's less about imposing your will on the world and more about discovering like your true purpose and acting in accordance with that.
Precisely.
Okay.
And Crowley believed that the tarot, specifically his Book of Thoth, could act as a guide in that process.
Right. And it's not just the Emperor card.
No, not at all.
He reinterprets a lot of the cards in very thought-provoking ways.
Absolutely. Take the Emperor card itself, for instance.
Like,
He connects it to the Hebrew letter Tzadi and explores its association with words like Czar, Kaiser, and Caesar.
oh, wow. So emphasizing that theme of authority and power.
Exactly. But within the context of this true will,
Right. Okay. So for someone approaching the Book of Thoth for the first time, what would you say is kind of the most important thing to keep in mind?
I think it's crucial to understand that you can't approach it as a straightforward symbolic system. You really need to consider Crowley's unique perspective, his intentions, and his definition of magic.
It's almost like reading a text with a secret code embedded within it.
Exactly. And deciphering that code requires a willingness to engage with Crowley's system as a whole,
Right.
including his often controversial views and practices.
Yeah. And for our listener out there, as you kind of delve into the Book of Thoth, what stands out to you about Crowley's approach to the tarot?
Right.
And how does it resonate with any prior knowledge or experience you might have?
Yeah, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, it really is like entering into a whole different way of thinking about things when you look at Crowley's system.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
Speaking of different ways of thinking about things, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the law of one.
Okay, yeah, from Crowley's very intensely personal system of magic to a cosmology that claims to encompass the entire universe.
Yeah, and this cosmology comes to us through a channeled text, right?
Yes.
So we're talking about, communication from an extraterrestrial entity named Ra.
Precisely. And I think what's really striking about the Law of One is that for all its complex descriptions of, densities, dimensions, and cosmic beings, it all boils down to a single profound principle.
Okay.
All is one.
So even with extraterrestrial beings and multiple dimensions, the core message is about unity.
It is, isn't it? And this concept of oneness really permeates the entire Law of One cosmology.
Yeah.
Everything from the smallest subatomic particle to the vast expanse of the cosmos is ultimately an expression of the one infinite creator.
Okay, so let's unpack some of the specifics here.
Sure.
The law of one talks about these different densities or dimensions of reality, with Earth currently transitioning from third to fourth density.
Yeah.
Now, I know this can get a little bit complex, so for those who might not be familiar with these concepts, could you break it down a bit?
Certainly imagine reality as a spectrum of consciousness with each density representing a different level of awareness and spiritual evolution.
Okay.
Third density, where we currently reside, is characterized by self-awareness and the development of individual identity.
Right.
Fourth density, which we're moving towards, is said to be a realm of greater compassion, understanding, and a deeper connection to the unity of all things.
So it's not like physical dimensions in space, but more like stages of spiritual evolution.
Exactly. It's about the evolution of consciousness itself.
Okay.
And this transition from third to fourth density is a key theme in the Law of One. It's described as a process of awakening a shift in our collective consciousness towards love, unity, and service to others.
And this is where the concept of wanderers comes in.
Yes.
Right? These souls from higher densities who incarnate on Earth to kind of help with this transition.
To aid in the process, exactly.
Yeah. What I find fascinating about that is this idea that we're not just, isolated individuals, but part of a larger cosmic drama.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the aspects that draws many people to the Law of One, this sense of interconnectedness, this idea that we're all playing a role in this grand cosmic evolution.
Yeah.
And the concept of wanderers, these souls choosing to incarnate into a denser reality to aid in that evolution, really speaks to, I think, a deep longing for purpose and connection that resonates with many.
It resonates with me for sure.
Yeah.
But with all this talk of cosmic unity and spiritual evolution, where does free will fit into this?
Right. Where does free will fit into the Law of One's picture?
Yeah.
Well, free will is absolutely central to the Law of One. It's seen as the driving force behind our choices and our evolution.
Right.
It suggests that we have the power to choose our path, to align ourselves with either service to others or service to self.
So it's not about being good or bad in a moralistic sense,
No.
but about the direction we choose for our energy, our intention.
Precisely. And this ties into the concept of polarity, the positive and negative paths of spiritual development. And it's not about judging one path as inherently superior to the other,
Okay.
but about understanding the consequences of each choice and how they ultimately lead us closer to or further from the realization of unity.
It seems like the law of one is painting this picture of a universe where we're constantly presented with choices.
Yes.
And those choices have real consequences, not just for ourselves, but for the collective evolution of consciousness.
That's a very insightful way to put it, and it brings us to another intriguing aspect of the Law of One, its perspective on UFOs and extraterrestrial contact.
Oh, yes, of course, we can't talk about extraterrestrial beings without mentioning those mysterious flying objects.
Right, what does the Law of One have to say about UFOs?
Exactly.
Well,
It describes the Confederation of Planets as a group of positively oriented extraterrestrial civilizations
Okay.
that seek to assist humanity's spiritual development. These beings are said to operate in accordance with the Law of One, respecting our free will and offering guidance only when requested.
So not all UFO sightings are about
Yeah.
nefarious alien invasions.
Not according to the Law of One, no.
Okay.
It also describes the Orion Group, a negatively oriented group that attempts to manipulate and control others for their own gain.
So we have these two different groups,
Do you?
kind of representing these different polarities.
Exactly. They represent the opposite polarity to the Confederation,
Right.
seeking to dominate rather than to serve.
It's fascinating to consider the possibility of these different extraterrestrial groups operating within our universe, each representing different aspects of this cosmic play of polarity.
It is, and it highlights the importance of discernment.
Yeah.
of carefully considering the information we receive both from within and from external sources.
Especially when we're dealing with topics as mind-bending as extraterrestrial contact and channeled messages.
Absolutely. But even with the potential for misinformation and varying interpretations, the Law of One consistently emphasizes the power of love and service to others as a means of accelerating spiritual growth.
Okay.
It suggests that aligning ourselves with these principles allows us to contribute to both our own evolution and the evolution of the planet as a whole.
It's a powerful message of hope and responsibility.
It
And it
is.
makes me wonder, how do these concepts of service, evolution, and free will connect back to Crowley's system of magic and the Book of Thoth?
Right. Are there any points of convergence between these seemingly disparate systems?
That's a really good question, and it's something that I've been kind of thinking about this whole time. Like, on the surface, we have Crowley with his focus on, personal will and the manipulation of reality through magic. And then we have the Law of One with its emphasis on cosmic unity, service to others, the evolution of consciousness. They seem to be coming from totally different places.
They do seem very different, don't they? And yet, when we look a bit closer, there are some surprising points of convergence, I think.
Okay, so what are we seeing here? Like, what kind of connections?
Yeah. Well, I think for starters, both systems are ultimately concerned with the nature of consciousness and its evolution.
Okay.
Crowley's system is rooted in the Kabbalistic tree of life and maps out different realms of existence, the progression of the soul through these realms.
And the Law of One talks about these densities, these stages of spiritual evolution. So both systems acknowledge that consciousness isn't static. There's a journey involved.
Precisely. And while Crowley might frame it in terms of individual will and magical attainment, and the Law of One speaks of aligning with the Creator's will through service to others, they both emphasize the importance of personal agency in this evolutionary process.
So whether you're talking about magic or service to others, it's about making choices that propel you forward on your spiritual journey.
Exactly. It's about taking an active role in shaping your reality rather than just being a passive recipient of fate.
Okay.
And this idea of polarity, this idea of positive and negative forces is present in both systems as well.
Yeah, Crowley talks about the duality of the divine, the male and female principles,
Yeah.
and the interplay of those forces. And we see a similar concept in the Law of One, with the choice between service to others and service to self.
That's right. And both systems recognize that these seemingly opposing forces are ultimately part of a greater whole. It's not about eradicating one or the other, but understanding their interplay and how they contribute to the evolution of consciousness.
So even though they use different language and symbols, they're both kind of pointing to this idea of a dynamic universe where we're constantly presented with choices that shape our reality and our spiritual growth.
Exactly. And that brings us to another intriguing connection. The Law of One mentions pyramids as powerful energy devices for healing and spiritual development.
Oh, and this is interesting because, some interpretations of Crowley's work suggest that pyramids might hold symbolic significance within the tarot as well.
Yes, particularly in relation to the concept of initiation and the transformation of consciousness.
Right.
That's a bit speculative, I'll grant you that.
Yeah.
But it does raise the question of whether there might be a deeper resonance between these systems than we might initially assume. Perhaps they're both tapping into some fundamental truths about the nature of reality and the workings of consciousness, even if they express those truths in very different ways.
Almost like they're two different languages trying to describe the same profound experience.
That's a wonderful analogy, and it highlights the inherent challenge of drawing direct correlations between the Book of Thoth and the Law of One.
Right.
They come from vastly different origins, historical contexts, and philosophical frameworks.
Of course.
But I think that's part of what makes this exploration so enriching.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's about expanding our perspective, considering different lenses through which we can view reality, and ultimately it's about asking ourselves what resonates with me, what sparks my own understanding, and inspires my own journey of growth.
Beautifully said. And on that note, I'd like to leave our listeners with a final thought to ponder. Given the Law of One's suggestion that Earth is transitioning to a higher density, a realm of greater compassion, understanding, how might the teachings within the Book of Thoth be reinterpreted or applied within this context of an evolving consciousness?
That is a really profound question. It really challenges us to think about how these systems might interact and inform each other as we kind of move into this new era. It's definitely something to contemplate as we continue our individual and collective journeys. Well, folks, we've reached the end of our deep dive for today. I hope you enjoyed exploring the Book of Thoth and the Law of One with us.
It's been a pleasure.
And until next time, May your journeys be filled with wonder and discovery.
And may your will be aligned with the highest and best for yourself and all beings.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you on the next one.